Welcome into Courtside Seats with Kroeger, a Charlotte Hornets podcast. Here he is, Chris Kroeger.
All right, here we go. Episode 22 of Courtside Seats, our Charlotte Hornets podcast. And I've been waiting to talk to this guy for a while because I think I don't want to play favorites, but I think he's one of the most interesting men we have in our entire organization because not only is he our associate head coach, he's the head coach for the Canadian national team. Jay Triano's with us. Jay, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
It's good to see you. I know this is kind of weird to say, but you moonlight with us. This is like your part-time gig on the side with us here at the Hornets.
It was, yeah. It's funny. When the Vancouver Grizzlies left Vancouver and went to Memphis, I didn't go with the team, and I started doing morning radio talk show. So,
you're speaking of my roots right now.
There we go. Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed the morning show. I was over. My day was done at 9 o'clock, which kind of made it fun. Yeah.
But how up were you early in the morning? Probably like 3, 4?
4:30, 4 o'clock, 4:30 for a 6 o'clock start. But and then you know what it's like. You got to do all your homework, so you got to stay up to watch the games the night before, know what's going on around the whole world of sports, not just the basketball world.
So can you just defend me for a second? Radio guys work hard, right? We got a lot of prep to do too. Maybe not as much as coaches, but we work hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah, got to be prepared. All right. Well, it's good to see you. How's Charlotte so far? It's been
great.
Gosh, what, like 4 months since you've been here or so, right?
Yeah. No, I got here. First part of August, and it's been great. And there was a lot of building with the staff and getting to know everybody on the staff so that we work well together. And then as players started trickling in, you start to build up those relationships with the players, and it's been great. I've been very happy with where we are and how things are going, and the interaction between staff, players, staff. I think it's a great fit here.
Well, it's been a wild year for you because about this time last year, you were just thrown into the fire as the interim head coach in Phoenix.
Yeah, 3 games in. When they relieved Earl Watson, it was a tough thing because all summer you prepare and you're going to be the assistant and we've got our plans going in, and then when something like that happens, it's kind of like a full change really, because who's your staff going to be, and we were a little bit restricted as to who could be on the staff. They brought the G League staff up to help develop those guys as coaches, so I had a tough job developing coaches and developing young G League coaches into becoming NBA coaches. So every day was like a classroom experience more than it was a basketball practice.
Well, Larry Drew is kind of in the same situation now in Cleveland, and I'm sure you empathize with him a lot, and it's you see these reports of Larry wants, hey, if I'm going to be the interim head coach, you got to compensate me a little more, right? Because all of a sudden you got so much more on your plate. I don't blame him for that.
Yeah, no, I don't blame him at all. You're in a position where everything's changed, and are you going to be committed for the long term? And if not, then let's just keep things the way that they were. And I know that Larry's probably going through that whole thought process right now.
So take me back to, I guess, your relationship with JB. Have you guys crossed paths before this?
Not at all.
So how does that take? That's, I think for a lot of people, that's what fans and other folks try and say. How on earth does Jay Triano land as the associate head coach for James Borrego if you guys didn't meet?
No, it was really interesting because I was in negotiations with the Suns, and I interviewed with the Suns to become the permanent coach, but I knew it wasn't going to happen. I mean, I knew it was an interim thing and that they were moving in a different direction, but they wanted to keep me there. They wanted to keep me with the young players and help develop them, and either in the organization or with the new coach, whoever that may be. It was not Igor at the time because they hadn't picked it, but I was like, okay, well, it's going to be awkward for the new guy coming in if I'm still here, and I have a relationship with these guys, and a phone number popped up that I didn't know. It was a text message, and it was James, and he said, "Could you please give me a call?" So I gave him a call. I just said, "Hey, congratulations! I heard you just got the job," and we had never. I thought he was honestly calling me to find out about any of my assistants that
really,
because I had a lot of real good young assistants in Phoenix, and he was like, "Are you interested?" And I said, "Heck yeah!" And I knew there were going to be a lot of other jobs opening up, but I've admired him from afar as an assistant and during his tenure when he was with the Orlando Magic. He was very honest, and he knew exactly what he wanted. He said, "I want somebody who's been a head coach before. I want somebody who's been in this position, and I need you to sit beside me and help me manage and navigate through a season."
Wow.
So I was like, okay, I'm into that. Charlotte's a great city, and I like the team. I had a relationship, obviously, prior with Nick Batum, because Nick was in Portland when he played so well, and I think part of my goal is to help get Nick back to what he was and when he was in Portland. And so I like the way everything fit, and I flew out here for a meeting, and I was like, it wasn't even a question in my mind. Do I sit around and wait for Dwayne Casey to get a job? Do I wait somewhere else? Do I look somewhere else? Do I try to fill a spot somewhere? This made sense right away, and I jumped on it.
How did that make you feel when a guy doesn't know you, but he respects you enough, knows your resume, knows your bona fides, and says, you're the guy. I've thought about this. Without a doubt, I want you to be my guy beside me.
Yeah, it's pretty good feeling. It is. It's and now my job is to just support him in every way, and I've enjoyed working with him. He's got an open mind. He wants input from coaches, and I think he's got a great future as a head coach.
Let me ask you this, because we've talked about this on the podcast at times, because this has always stuck with me. JB has told us that he wants guys that don't look like him, don't sound like him, don't talk like him, don't always think the same way he does, because he wants to be pushed, he wants to be challenged. That's how you get growth, right? And I think it's easy to say that. It's another thing to do it. It's another thing to be about that. But clearly he is, right? Your entire staff is so diverse in every way imaginable. How normal is that? How common is that in the NBA to have a staff that intentionally is different because you want to get that creative, process working inside the coaching room?
I think it's one of the things that makes coaches great is their ability to look outside what they have and who they are, and say, I might not be really good at this, so I need to bring this type of guy in. I might be a laid-back guy, so I need a rah-rah guy. And I think when you can identify what your weaknesses are or what you want more emphasis on, then you go out and you find a staff like that. And, you don't hire your friends. I think that people have learned a long time ago that this is not a business where you hire friends. You hire people that are going to help you be successful. And that's why I say, like our staff, we all kind of just met. I don't think a whole lot of us knew each other than looking across a bench at somebody. But the NBA world is small, and you know of their work. Like, when you play a team that's well prepared. You know when you play against somebody who runs really good stuff. I think we knew of each other, but we didn't know each other. And now it's become part of a family.
See, I'm not around you guys, obviously, from the day-to-day standpoint in terms of what you guys are doing behind closed doors, but just being around you guys on the road, seeing you guys on game day, you guys get along really well. I feel like the chemistry is good with your coaching room.
I think everybody's super excited to be here. And I think, the one thing is we all came in and it was a clear and blank page. I mean, it was like we've got a new general manager, we've got a new head coach, we've got a new trainer, we've got all new assistant coaches. Nobody's been left over. So we're all in this together. And it's one of the reasons that I declined to do the Canadian thing in September, is because I didn't want to miss the growth that we had started with the coaches here. And I could see through summer league that this is going to be a fun group. We're all on the same page. And there's not one coach in there that doesn't want to work. There's not one coach in there who's never prepared, and I think that we've got the makings of building something really, really positive here.
Is there one guy in particular who always brings something up where you're like, man, how did you see that? That's so different. I wouldn't have looked at it that way.
I think that's there's different days, it's different people that have something that, hey, did you see this last night? I saw this team do this. I kind of like that. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I saw it too. No, I didn't see that. But, it's fun because we all love the game. And we all, it's not like anybody's going home to go, I'm going to go home and hang out. Right. Everybody's going home and they're watching other games and coming things. So we got a bunch of basketball junkies, which is really fun. It makes it fun coming to work for sure.
Not only are you the head coach of the Canadian national team, you played for the Canadian national team. You're a native of Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada, not the U.S. You're on the other side of the river.
Thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully. Well, hold up now.
Yeah, no, really, that 100 yards of the border allowed me to play in 2 Olympics.
That's true.
I don't think I'm playing in the Olympics if I was born, 100 yards south in Niagara Falls, New York.
Okay.
But being Canadian, I spent, a lot of time traveling over the border to play games. Hockey hockey was obviously a big thing in Canada, and didn't have a lot of pickup games, but Niagara University was right across the river, and I could go over there and play pickup, and that's where I kind of learned how to play a little bit. And even when I went to Simon Fraser University out in Vancouver, I would go to Seattle all the time to get pickup games and play against the best competition I could. So it allowed me to be a Canadian and get pretty good at the game, and not have to compete against Americans to try to participate in an Olympic game. So I really feel like I had the best of both worlds. I grew up on the Canadian side, but got to experience U.S. basketball.
Naismith is Canadian, though, right?
Yeah.
So, I feel like you guys don't get credit for, did Canada invent basketball? I don't know. How do we feel about this? What's the letter of the law on that?
Well, he's a Canadian, but he was in Springfield when he invented it.
Right.
Who knows? I mean,
it's you know what this is like? Here in North Carolina, we claim first in flight, right?
Mm-hmm,
because Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, the Wright brothers,
yep.
But they're from Ohio. So Ohio also claims they were first in flight.
There
but
we go.
They didn't fly in Ohio. They were just born in Ohio. So how does that work, right? It's kind of the same thing, I feel like.
Exactly. No, and it's funny because the game of basketball has been so good to me, and playing in 2 Olympics, and then I was part of the boycott in 1980 was a big thing. So and that's what really fueled my drive to coach, is that I said all along, if I could ever take 12 players to an Olympic Games and have them experience what I did being an Olympic athlete, that would be pretty special. So in 2000, when we did that with Steve Nash and Todd McCulloch, it was a pretty special moment for me.
Did you feel this sense of pride not only when you got to play in the Olympics, but now coaching the national team not once but twice? But have you always felt a sense of pride of, I want to grow the game of basketball in my country? Have you always felt that fire within you of hey, I feel like I've got to carry this thing forward and grow this game, or is it more latent than that?
No, I think it's kind of how I grew up. I was just starting to fall in love with the game, and my dad took me to a game at Niagara University. It was before the '76 Olympics, so I might have been 16 or 17 years old. And I was a good high school player, but I went and watched that game, and the Canadian team was getting ready to play in the Olympics in Montreal, and they were playing against the NCAA school, Niagara University. And there was something about that game that really got me. I mean, it was a close game. It was a good game. The university kids were always cheering for Niagara University, but there were about 50 or so Canadians that had traveled across the border and were sitting all in one section cheering for Canada. And at the end of the game, when they played the Canadian national anthem, because Canada had won the game, and that was the thing, you play the anthem of the winning team, and it was just kind of like, this is really cool. And I just felt a real sense of pride, and that was it. My goal was going to be to play for that team. And I just went, from that day on, it was like every single minute of every day in my life was committed to the game of basketball, and this is how I'm going to play for that team one day.
You got drafted by the Canadian Football League, though, too, right? Is that true?
Yeah. So the year that we boycotted in 1980, we qualified for the Olympics but didn't go. Brazil went in our place and ended up winning the bronze medal. So I had a hard time seeing, 1984 is too far away for me. So I went back to school at Simon Fraser, and I just had a hard time getting back into the basketball. 4 years was a long time away. So I started playing. I'd go out and work out with the football guys and started playing a little bit, and the guys said, you know what, you could probably play. So I played 1 year of football at university and ended up getting drafted. But at the same time, I as soon as the basketball season started, my love for basketball had come back, and I got drafted the same year. So within a month, I got drafted in the CFL and in the NBA by the Los Angeles Lakers. But that's back when they had 8 rounds.
I know. That's wild.
Yeah. So I always used to, last year in Phoenix, I used to work with Ann Myers, the great player. And we'd always talk about the game and people would say, well, you got drafted in the 8th round. I said, yeah, I know, but Ann got drafted in the 7th round. Which I don't think is true, but she signed a pro contract before I did, which was, but we would joke about it all the time. Anyways, it's my love was always for basketball, but the 1 year I played football, it actually helped my basketball. I became a lot more aggressive.
What position did you play?
I was a defensive back. I wanted to be a receiver, but they wouldn't let me because they said you're going to get hit, and I didn't really want to be a defensive player, but then I started playing defense, and then I started hitting people, and I loved it. I loved hitting people. And it helped me become a better basketball player. I looked for contact rather than avoiding it.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Which wouldn't work in today's game. because we had all these freedom of movement rules, so we'd have to be careful about that.
No kidding. Yeah.
All right. Well, the other interesting thing is, like you said, your NBA career. So when you got into the NBA as a player and then you started to work your way up as an assistant coach, like I've seen it as a broadcaster, there's just something infectious about this league. Like, I don't know, I think it is the best athletes in the world. Now the game's even more open, so we get to see these guys in space make plays, which is so incredible. Yeah. But like you're talking about with the coaching staff, I think everybody in this league wants to help each other, whether it's broadcasters, media types, coaches, players. There's something about this league that until you're around it and in it, you don't realize, man, it's a bug, and you get in here and you just don't want to quit, right?
Absolutely, no. And I'm not even sure if you're aware that my first 6 years in the league, I did what you do. I was radio and TV broadcaster for the Vancouver Grizzlies, and I left coaching college to move over to the Vancouver Grizzlies. They had just come to Vancouver, and they were looking for somebody who knew the sport in the area, who could educate the Canadians on the game, and they just made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And but I saw then exactly what you're saying. Like the coaches there, Brian Winters and Brian Hill, who were first-year coaches with that new franchise, they opened it up to coaches. They said, come on in and watch practice if you want. If you're a coach, you can come in and watch practice. You coach the Canadian team, come on in here and watch. And it was like a fraternity where everybody shared everything, and the people who are in it don't mind sharing everything about it. And I really like the fact that, I love the travel but I'm not saying this because you do it now, but I didn't find for me that the broadcasts and being an executive as I was when you're in Toronto was competitive enough. I still have that competitive. I want to go home at the end of the night with a win or a loss. Yeah. And I want to go home and strategize, how am I going to win? Now I could go home and pat myself on the back and say, that was a heck of a broadcast. And you take pride in what you do. Yep. But I had to have that in my life still. So I moved to the coaching side as soon as I could, and I've been in it for 23 years in the NBA, and 17 as a coach. So I enjoy the competitive part of the sport.
You know what's wild, though, is, and I guess, probably for me it's a deeper connection because I grew up here. I grew up a Hornets fan, going to Hornets games. And I've told this to Matt Carroll, like, it's amazing. I do live and die with every possession. Oh, yeah. And so it's tough to me because I'm sitting here trying to call a game, but I feel like I'm a part of the team. And in a way I am, in a small way as a broadcaster. Yeah. But, like, I went home last night after that loss to the Thunder. I couldn't sleep, Coach.
I'm deflated.
And I was sick over it. And you wake up sick. And I didn't play, so I can't imagine what it's like as a coach or a player in these games.
No. So the first year I did it in Vancouver, I don't know how many games. They won 13 games, so there were a lot of nights I went home because I was the same as you. I think when you're invested in it and you travel with us and you call every game and you're at practices and watching what we're going through, and you become part of that family. And so when it doesn't go the way you want it to go, it hurts, and it's tough to sleep, and it's tough to get bounce back the next day and have that positive attitude that we as coaches have to have, because we got to. The good thing about the NBA is there's another game right around the corner, and you got to either celebrate real quick and move on, or forget about it real quick and move on.
But you know what's funny is Steve Martin was texting me. Steve called the games for all 30 years before I took over. Steve texted me the very first night we had our opener against Milwaukee, and he said, good luck, you're going to do a great job, I'm so proud of you. And he said, just remember, the wins are going to feel great, the losses are going to hurt, but you got to throw yourself into your preparation for the next game, and that'll help you move on. Yeah, and it's the truth, right?
It's so true.
It's so true.
Yeah, it's so true. Even as coaches today, we're sitting there talking about last night's game, and we're like, okay, what can we do to get better? We got to move on. Yep. It still stung, a 19-point lead, and playing against two All-Stars. They got us, and now, hey, move on. Let's go.
But the games come so quick.
We got another one tomorrow.
We
got another one tomorrow. So let's get these guys let's educate, get them some rest, and let's bounce back tomorrow.
So as a kid who grew up in Ontario, what was it like to be the head coach for the Toronto Raptors?
It's almost surreal, really. Yeah. To be the first Canadian coach in the NBA was something, but to have it happen like in the area that I grew up in, the area that I played, senior men's basketball with a lot of people, a lot of coaches, from Canada. Knowing them and being friends with them, and then to have the highest position in our country as a basketball coach, was coaching the national team, but also coaching the Raptors too. So it was really interesting time, and it was a huge honor, obviously. And I always say I haven't been thrown into the best positions because it was a rebuild. We drafted DeMar DeRozan, who was a child at the time and has turned out to be an all-star. But we went through the growing pains with him, and but that's part of the thing that you like about this league too. I can still see him now as an all-star, and know that you were part of his development. And that's one of the things. Even last year, having Booker for 2 years, he's going to be a great player, and you give him everything that you can, and then you sit back and you're a little bit proud of the type of players that they turn out to be.
I know Dell has told me this. He loved playing in Toronto. And, of course, he always is. I mean, this is home to Dell. Was, still is, always will be. But he said there was something special about being in Toronto and being, especially now that the Grizzlies are gone, now that's a country's team. It's an entire, that's something I think we in this country don't grasp, that an entire nation, they're on national TV every game. Right. Every single game's national TV up there.
Yeah, it's crazy. They kind of got rid of that 75-mile radius of marketing and said you can have the whole country.
Why not?
When the Grizzlies left. And it's turned in, it's a hotbed. It really is. And we're seeing it more and more now at the collegiate level. R.J. Barrett, a player that a lot of people talk about at Duke right now, is part of it. But I think they're projecting maybe 5 Canadians in the first round next year. And it all started because the NBA came to Canada. We're seeing the generation of players, Corey Joseph and Tristan Thompson and Kelly Olynyk, that grew up with basketball on TV in their homes, whereas prior to that, all we ever saw was Hockey Night in Canada, and every kid aspired to be an NHL player. It just gave a different group of athletes a different way to look at, sport. And then, I think Vince Carter being in Toronto and being a human highlight film he was on the sports every night with a different highlight, and people were like, this is really cool. And then Steve Nash said, okay, well, it's not only cool, but a Canadian can make it and be the best player in the league. This is really, and I think that opened the doors and why we're seeing so many more Canadians now in the NBA.
Do we go back? I think this year is the number is 172, maybe. Don't quote me on that. It's north of 170 international-born players playing in the NBA right now as the start of the season opened up. Highest number in NBA history. Every year it's a little higher. Mm-hmm. But what do we go back to on that? Is that the dream team? Does it start in '92? Do you think that's the origin of that?
I think so. I think their playing and their dominance sent a message around the world that basketball is at a different level in the NBA, and everybody's going to follow. Everybody's going to follow the best, no matter what it is. And the best players at that time, they watched how they played, they watched how they shot, they watched how they passed and ran the floor and the sets that they executed, and everybody took it home and said, this is what we want to do.
Yeah, and I was watching, I don't know if you've seen this, the documentary that's out now, and it's ridiculous. It's 18 hours. The
Love of the Game?
Love, a basketball story. And they've been doing the little vignettes every week. It's 1 hour at a time. Yeah. And they had one on Michael and the Bulls and the Dream Team, kind of that whole era in the 90s around Michael, right? And the not only celebrity status of the players amongst the fans, especially in Barcelona, but the other players where you're snapping photographs after you get beat by 40, and it's, hey, can we grab a picture with you guys before we walk off the court?
I was an assistant coach for the Canadian team when we competed against that Dream Team in Portland in the qualifying tournament to get to go. And that was a big debate amongst the team, was we don't want to take our picture with them. We want to try to beat them. And everybody's looking around. And I remember the coach at the time, his name was Ken Shields, and he came into the room and he looked around and he goes, okay, Ronnie, you got Magic, you got Michael, you got Larry. And it was almost like the players actually laughed like you just did. They laughed like you just did. They were just like, come on, man. You got, the coaches come in, they got the scouting report prepared, and that's what he said.
What do you do?
You got Magic, you got Michael, you got Larry, you got Patrick, and they just started laughing. Everybody started laughing, going, this is crazy. This is crazy how funny it is.
So did you guys take a picture?
I can't remember if they did. I think they did. I think they did take a picture after the game. They said, we'll take one after, but we're going to try to compete with them. We don't want to take a picture before the game.
But what's funny is over time, I think, there's been the stigma of international players up there. They're soft and maybe they're skilled, but they're not aggressive. They're not tough. They're not physical. All the stereotypes, right, that people built up over the years. And maybe some of that started then, back in the early years. But none of that's true anymore. you go look at international players, they're every bit as tough and physical, and in some ways more skilled. I think some of those things are true, but over time, the international players have really carved out a lane. Dirk's been such a big part of that. Tony Parker's been such a big part of that. Manu, all the guys. But, all the stuff that people used to say about international players, I don't think hardly any of that's true anymore, stereotypes.
Look at Steven Adams last night. I mean,
unbelievable.
Yeah, he's soft.
Yeah.
He's soft
go
player,
ahead.
Soft player from New Zealand.
7 feet, 6'2", 265.
I'll tell you, yeah. No, you're right. I think, like we said, the game has changed and evolved, and it's changed and evolved around the world because of the NBA.
Do you like the way the game's being played right now? Open spacing, shooting the three ball?
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, it's contrary to everything that this league was about when I first started. It was, you run plays and mid-range shot was good and it was okay. And now, teams are, ooh, that's not a good shot. And it was an open 15-footer. Actually, any open shot's a good shot. But
right.
It's just like we could have got a three. And the game has really changed. And the analytics have taken over, and it's kind of evolved in a different way, and everybody's trying to mirror and copy it.
Do you remember the first time somebody came to you at any level, whether it's in the NBA or even international play, where somebody kind of brought to you and said, hey, I've got this data here, right? Like I've got these, we can use analytics data. It's the same it's the same thing, right? They're synonyms for one another. But I've got this data that says what we're doing here maybe isn't the smartest way to play, or we're doing something, and here's why it's working, right? Yeah. Analytics can mean a number of things.
Absolutely.
But do you remember the first time somebody kind of brought information to you saying, hey, I think this might be worthwhile?
I don't remember exactly then, but I remember having so many debates with different coaches and different people in the analytics world. Ben Falk is a guy who I worked with in Portland, and we would sit down and watch tape. And I have my own philosophy on things of forcing guys to their weak hand, just because I don't think you can throw a pass on time and on target to a guy as easily with your left hand as you can with your right hand. So leaning on the right arm all the time and trying to make guys make plays. So I would show him games like that, and he would just come right back at me and show me where 3-point shots were effective. And you don't want to. I said, so you'd like to come down and take a three every time? He goes, yes. He said, but it's not going to happen. You got to get to the rim because the teams are going to be up against you. Right. But getting to the rim is the best thing. But teams are going to take that away. So when they take that away, the three, and then we would look at some of the teams that were being successful. I mean, Daryl Morey in Houston, where they took analytics to a different level, and it kind of changed the game. And I think some of the teams started playing around with their G League teams or the D League teams at the time, and they tried to play. The one team in Sacramento at one time tried to play as fast as they possibly could, and get it down and shoot within 6 seconds all the time. Didn't matter what happened. Create more possessions. Other teams shoot only threes. Other teams mirror what your main team is doing. So it became an experimental league, and I think when people started looking at the numbers, they go, "This is the way that the best teams are playing." And you can argue them, and you can say old school, this and that, but the three best teams in the playoffs last year, or the three best teams in the NBA, took the most threes. And you want to be like them. You don't want to fall behind.
But also to that end, and maybe Golden State's a little bit of an outlier because they've got the best backcourt shooting-wise, three-point shooting-wise in NBA history. I mean, I think that's maybe without argument now, and Clay and Steph. But you look at everybody else, like with Boston, with Horford. Look at Toronto. They got two of them in Valanciunas and what they can do with Ibaka, too, playing as a small ball five. Yeah. We saw with Oklahoma City, Steven Adams. The one thing I think people have actually confused with what you're talking about with which is getting shots to the rim, 3-point shots, getting to the free throw line, is people talking about the depth of the center. Look at Nurkic in Portland. Look at Jokic in Denver. The center's alive and well in the NBA. You just got to have a different skill set. But if you're a dominant big man, there's a place for you in today's game still.
Absolutely. But I think the one thing I would say to that is that a lot of the centers now are stepping out and shooting the three.
They are.
Because that allows you to not only have the dominant center inside to help protect the ring at one end and to get to the basket at the other end, but it also creates space on the floor. And that's what everybody's looking for is these players are getting bigger and they're getting faster. And you watch old games. I don't know if it was the short shorts or what, but they look small.
Yeah.
Like even the big guys look small. Now everybody's massive. They're big, they're chiseled, and the court has still the same dimensions. And I even think the analytics of the corner three have become a little bit less in the last year or two than the arc three, because the sideline is a detriment to your spacing. And we're seeing more guys shoot from 5 and 6 feet beyond the arc at the top on a consistent basis. But you can't do that in the corners. And that creates even more space to get to the rim. No, hey, listen, getting to the rim is the number one thing. Points per possession, it's still number one. Getting fouled is number two. It's the three-point shot that's number three. So you can't just come down and jack threes. You got to have strategies to get to the rim and get fouled as well.
So that's interesting, though, because what you're talking about is, so the corner three, the reason the corner three is so valuable, as everybody knows, is not only is that shot worth 50% more than the other shots on the court,
right.
It's a 3 versus a 2, but it's the shortest spot behind the arc.
Right.
But your point, you're in the short corner.
And guys are bigger and faster. They're getting there now.
Yeah, guys close out. Trap you in the corner.
We used to see, like a couple of years ago, a lot more corner threes being taken. But now guys are leaning, number one, they're leaning on that corner three, and they're not as far away from the basket. Now you got to try to guard a James Harden or a Damian Lillard who are pulling up from 8-9 feet beyond the three-point line. Now you close that space, and now they have more room to go around. So I really think the game is growing towards the arc than it is in the corner. I mean, the corner shot's still going to be a better shot, just like
especially if you're open. To your point, if you're open, you take it.
Absolutely.
Well, what do you think you do if you're the NBA? Do we move the three-point line out?
No.
You don't think that's going to happen?
Guys barely fit in there now with a size 15 shoe in that corner. It's like there's 4 inches in front.
Well, yeah. What would you
behind.
do? Because you'd have to extend the court essentially.
Yeah.
When you're not doing that either.
No, I don't think. I think the game has changed because of the size and the quickness of the players, and I think that's why the NBA looks at rule changes, freedom of movement, and everything, and that's why we're seeing it called a little bit differently right now. They want to create more offense, and so far it's working. Teams are playing at a very fast pace.
All right, we'll wrap up with some Hornets talk really quickly here. When you knew Tony was going to come here, I know you guys were all excited. Every player was, every coach was, but it's only 9 games in, but has it even surpassed what you thought he'd be so far for this team? In every way, on the court, off the court, leadership, all that.
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, I've known him obviously only as an opponent, both for the French team when Canada played France, and all the years that he was in San Antonio with the different teams that I've been with. So, but he just like basketball mind, serious about the game, loves to play, loves to compete, and has accepted where he is in his career. And I think that is probably the toughest thing for any player to do. Understand who you are and where you are in your career. And Tony's like, I'm fine coming off the bench. I'm here to help Kemba. I'm here to, if I can play really well and give him more rest, that's going to be better for him, not only later in a game, but later in the season. And he just seems to get it, and he's got a great basketball mind.
I've seen situations during practice, during shoot-arounds where, the starters are installing a set on one end. You've got some of the reserves on the other end. Tony's out there. And sometimes when they're alternating and the guys are just waiting for JB to run in the next set, I'll see him taking Malik and Miles and running them through and really saying, hey, here's a wrinkle here. Here's what we should be doing. Here's where you can go. Here's something we could do and play off of here. I mean, it's very clear he's got a working knowledge and institutional knowledge of this offense that is beyond anything. But on top of that, just the awareness and the ability and the credibility, which is the biggest part of this, to do that. How common is that in the NBA?
It's not. It doesn't happen everywhere, and it doesn't happen with a lot of people. A lot of guys get to that point in their career, and they're just like, how can I manage myself? But
it's shoot around game 8, let's go home, right?
Right.
Let's just go through the motions.
I got to get myself ready.
Right.
And, but the one thing, he has been very gracious with his education of these, and it's going to help these guys. As coaches, we can say what we want to Malik, and these guys, I'll tell you one thing, these guys have been great to coach so far. They're very open to learning and want to get better. Miles is in the same boat. And we can say it as a coach, and they're going to like it and respect it. But when another player who has had the career that he's had does it, because he's been in the fire, because he's had to go through everything, that just carries a different angle than what maybe we're saying as coaches. And it's the same message because of his relationship with JB. So I think it's all positive, and it's going to really help not just us on the court, but it's going to help the growth of our young players to understand what it's like to be a true pro.
What surprised you most being around Kemba Walker? Same thing, because you've only seen him from afar and in a different conference the last couple of years. So what's it been like to see him up close and personal?
I've said this to many people too, because I didn't know him at all. I know a guy that I tried to stop or figure out how we're going to try to stop. I knew him as a competitor. I didn't know him personally at all. He might be one of the nicest people I've ever met. He's just like a genuinely happy, positive guy who is fun to be around. And when your leader is that, it makes coming here so much more enjoyable. So, that, and his skill set, obviously, we see him on TV, you prepare for him in scouts, so you know who he is as a basketball player. I've just been blown away with the type of person that he is.
It's unbelievable how he uses his size, which people would say is a disadvantage, to his advantage, right? The way he gets to the basket, draws contact too at the rim. I mean, he has discovered ways to, because he can maneuver in tight spaces and split double teams and quickly throw himself into the body of a defender. Yeah. He's used that disadvantage as an advantage now.
And he's had to. I mean, that's how at his size you become great. Is because how am I going to score against this guy? Well, I'm going to isolate you because I'm going to hit you first, and with that contact, it takes you out of you can't jump. And he's kind of figured that out throughout his whole career. He's had to. It's not like he was 7 feet and then became small and had to go, I got to change my game. It's it's who he is. How am I going to score? How am I going to use my quickness? How am I going to use my body to get a bump and freeze the defense a little bit so that they can't jump? But he's got a great skill as far as being able to score at the rim at his size.
All right, selfish plug. You've got a book out. How can people check out your book?
I don't even know.
What do you mean you don't know? Of course, no, you know. What do you mean you don't know?
I know I have a book out. Everybody's saying, where can I get it? I don't know.
You said it sold out on Amazon in Canada.
It did. It sold out, but they had 10 copies. So no,
they have more than that. Stop it.
It's funny because Simon & Schuster approached me and said, we need you to write a book. I said, I don't want to write a book. I'm too busy, number one. I don't want to do this. And they said, you know what? Basketball in our country is growing like exponentially. We're going to have 13 players in the NBA as right now, the most of any other country in the world. And people have to know the history of it, where it came from. I mean, you've coached the national team on 2 occasions. You played in 2 or 3 Olympics, and we need to hear about it. So we started talking and telling stories, and they just said, "Okay, we're going to make this book." And I said, "Okay." So I sat down with the guy, and we just told stories like you and I are talking right now. Yeah. He took a bunch of notes, and they produced this book. It's called Open Shot or Open Look, and it's a open look at Canadian basketball and how I grew through it.
Wherever books are sold. I always love saying that. Get it wherever books are sold.
Which
for you is like a question. I don't know. You tell me. Wherever it's sold.
I got one in my office for you. That's all I know.
I'm going to go get it after we get done. Hey, Jay, this is long overdue. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and we'll catch up soon, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris.
That's episode 22 of Courtside Seats. Hornets associate head coach Jay Triano and the head coach for the Canadian national team. There'll actually be some conflicts throughout the year where Jay might have to pull double duty, and that's part of his agreement with JB and this coaching staff. They understand that he's going to get pulled in a few different directions, and they want his expertise nonetheless whenever they can take him. So we appreciate Jay sharing his story a little bit. You can check us out. All of our previous episodes of Courtside Seats available in Apple Podcasts. You can find us wherever else podcasts are available. YouTube on our Charlotte Hornets YouTube channel, and of course always on Hornets.com. and the Hornets mobile app. You can always just search Courtside Seats whenever you're trying to find us, or my name, Kroeger, Kroeger. We'll catch you guys back here again next week, another edition of Courtside Seats.